I think it's waiting for a couple board members to return, so we'll start after that. And thank you all for joining us.
I'm back if you were waiting for me. Can't hear you, Andy.
Tamika, I figured you were still there because we haven't seen your face on cam. It's Ms. Vukovic. I don't know if she's there.
I'm here.
Oh, you are. Okay, then. All right, then. Dr. Moser, I'm going to call the meeting to, well, I'm going to reconvene Ocean 7 in open session. And that's item 1D. So I'm going to ask that there be a motion on item 1E, which is agenda approval.
I will move for the agenda approval minus item 3G in the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second to removing item G from the consent agenda and approving?
Second,
Great.
Danielle.
All right, then I will do roll vote. Teresa Seam.
Aye.
Tamika Vukovic. You're on mute. I'll skip you for a moment. Ms. Krychowiak,
Aye.
Danielle Bailey,
Aye.
Tamika Vukovic again, and I'll vote aye. So the agenda is approved, but we will not be addressing item G listed in the consent agenda this evening. So item 2A is a reopening update. And Dr. Moser, I note you're on mute, but if you would take the reins, I'd be grateful.
Dr. Moser, you're muted.
There we go.
You really want to hear me talk? You sure? You sure of that?
It would help.
Oh, okay, thank you. I apologize. Wanted to bring everyone up to date on what is happening concerning the reopening proposals. Tomorrow night at 6:30, the school board is holding a special school board meeting that will have one item on the agenda, and that's the discussion of proposed reopening plan for the Glendale-River Hills schools. It will be at that meeting that I will make a recommendation. The co-chairs of the planning committee will provide supportive data. The school board will have the opportunity for questions and comments. The public will have a chance for questions and comments. The board will also have the opportunity for making any amendments to the plan. And then if the board so desires, the board would take a vote on a reopening plan if they want to. Just also to the plan has been posted. It's online for the community and the board to see. The board received the plan earlier today. The community, it's been posted online for the community. The co-chairs have also sent to the school board a copy of the presentation for tomorrow night, so they can look at the slide presentation ahead of time, so that they do not have to be rushed in the discussion on the proposed reopening plan. And tonight, Dr. Kilton will be giving her usual update on the from the North Shore Health Department. That is a perfect lead in to the discussion on a proposal tomorrow night for a reopening of our schools. So thank you, Mr. Franklin, for allowing me to give that explanation of the process. Tonight is not intended to be the evening for the reopening presentation. Tomorrow night is totally devoted to it.
And we are also going to have visitor participation tomorrow evening, in addition to obviously the question that the board may have. So we will be expecting a vibrant discussion and hope everyone can join tomorrow as well. All right, then should I move on to item 3A? Which is, or item 3, which is consideration of the consent agenda. Item 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D, 3E, and 3F are our consent agenda for the evening. Item 3A is approval of minutes from various meetings between January 7th and January 28th. Item 3B is approval of financials. Item C is approval of personnel additions needed for the reopening plan. This is a conditional item where we are going to approve of the hiring, but the hiring would then be enacted, of course, based on what happens with the reopening. But we're giving a preliminary authorization to Dr. Moser if approved. That is for the hiring of additional staff at Glen Hills and Parkway to help us be prepared for reopening in conjunction with the plan that has been released. Item 3D is approving the hiring of the school business administrator. This is not an action item on a contract, but rather approval to engage in negotiations with the candidate. Item 3E is approval of hiring an associate principal at Glen Hills Middle School to complete the 2021 to 2022 school year. This would be a limited term role to complete the school, provided that the school is reopened in person. And again, this is one of these conditional approvals to begin engaging in negotiation and with a candidate. Item 3F is approval of extracurricular contracts. Dr. Moser is recommending that the board approve compensation for extracurricular activities that were held despite us being virtual. There's a list of staff who have led extracurricular activities who are going to be, if this is approved, compensated in accordance with their agreed upon compensation that has not yet occurred for the current school year. And then item 3F has been dropped. I'm sorry, item 3G rather has been dropped. So that is the consent agenda. And so I would ask if there's a motion on that consent agenda to approve it for items 3A through 3F.
So moved, Teresa.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, then I'll do a roll call vote. Teresa Seam
Aye.
and Tamika Vukovic,
Aye.
Molly Krejciak,
Aye. Danielle
Bailey,
Aye.
Andrew Franklin votes aye. The motion carries on the consent items. Item number 4A, reports. Update on world language. Ms. Jenica Westfall, Director of Instruction, Mr. Mark Wagner, German teacher, Ms. Holly Skelton, Ms. Weegee, and Ms. Swenson will be giving an update on our world language curriculum. I apologize for reading the introduction, Dr. Moser, but I will hand it off to you.
No, thank you very much, President Franklin. And I'm just going to turn it over to Ms. Westfall to make introductions and to thank our world language faculty for being here this evening to talk with the school board. So Ms. Westfall, if you please.
Yes, I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Welcome, everyone. And if you're Parkway families, you have a lot to look forward to as your students head to Glen Hills. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. Okay. Well, I would like to start by saying thank you to Dr. Moser and the school board for giving us the opportunity to share this update with the school community on the work that we've been doing in involving world language. Our programming really wouldn't be possible or successful without all of these teacher leaders that are on the call this evening. So we have Holly Skelton that was mentioned, Heather Swenson, Whitney Weege, and Mark Wagner. So we have our Spanish 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers, and then Mark Wagner, who is all German, right? 7th through 12th grade. So thank you for participating in this.
Miss Westfall, could you make Heather Swenson a co-host so that she can turn on her camera for us?
Sure, Karen, could you do that for me, please?
Thank you.
Karen's got the reins. Okay, so just a little background. Glendale is one out of 3 partner K-8 districts. All of our students attend Nicolay High School. As a teaching and learning team, I work closely with the directors at Mapledale Indian Hill, Fox Point Bayside, Nicolay High School, and then of course us, Glendale-River Hills School District. And we really work together to align our curriculum and instructional practices so that everyone has a smooth transition to Nicolay. So we work together to review and evaluate curriculum. We do this usually on a 5-year cycle. And then also if there's new standards that come out of DPI, we'll also do a curriculum cycle during that time. And world language just came out with some new standards over the last year, so that prompted us to do some work around world language. So the process that we follow is a continuous improvement process. We do the plan, do, study, act process. So really thinking about looking at our current state, where we're at. Then we look also at a gap analysis, deciding where we have any holes based off of the new standards. We do some studying, looking at possible resources, piloting materials, creating common assessments. And then finally, we get into the ACT, and that is completing the lesson plans and doing some progress monitoring and gathering some feedback around our instructional practices and what's working and what's not. So these are all the members that participated in the collaboration with the partner schools. So we had quite a few members from Nicolay, their world language team and their directors, along with Fox Point Bayside, Glendale-River Hills, and then Mapledale Indian Hill. So as you can see, we had our Spanish and our German teachers represented in the work. So what did this kind of look like over the last 2 years? So in 2019 and 20, we spent a lot of work collaborating together. So we started with really identifying gaps in the standards, and we started brainstorming some ideas around some focus areas that we could collaborate on. We also spent some time in January having some PD around the new standards and taking a deep dive into them. And then we also did some collaborating on some alignment between the standards and then our focus areas. During February, March, and April, we started doing some revision around our articulation exams for Spanish and for German. And then we started writing some of our outcomes and proficiency scales for our courses. This work has continued also over summer and throughout the school year. So we're still meeting with subcommittees. So Spanish more meets as subcommittees because Mark is the one who pretty much does the German program all the way through. He's his own committee. But we're doing a lot of work with Nicolay coming to Glen Hills, and then also having conversations with the partner districts on the Spanish end of it. And then we meet weekly to really revise and refine our instruction. I'm sure all of you know there's definitely challenges with trying to do this in a virtual format, right? So, and really our goal for world language is the acquisition of language and development of communicative ability. So I'm going to hand this over to our 8th grade Spanish teacher, Holly Skelton, and she's going to talk through a little bit of our continued work that we're doing.
Thank you, Jenica. So just to read, my name is Holly Skelton. I'm the 8th grade Spanish teacher. I've been teaching Spanish now for about 15 years. This is my first full year at Glen Hills, and I'm very, very excited to be part of this work in world language and the curriculum. Next slide, Jenica, please. So one of the first things that we did, knowing that Nicolay adopted a new textbook this year, was we looked at the units and figured out which grade level would fit the units the best, because their level 1 articulates through 7th and 8th grade for us. So in 6th grade, we kind of have that labeled as an exploratory level, but really what the students are focusing on are emergent language skills and some introductory vocabulary, alphabet, numbers, calendar, weather, some simple conversational skills, self-introductions, and things like that. And really what that's going to do is give them a solid base of confidence moving into 7th grade Spanish. Our 7th grade, we chose to cover the 3 units that focus on self-description, self-introduction, what I look like, what do I like and dislike, our family, our home, our daily routine. And also in 7th grade, the students do read 1 novel in Spanish. In 8th grade, we decided to cover the 3 units that expand outward more into our community. So our school life and the classes we take at school, careers we would like to have in the future, places to go in the city, ways to travel about the city, jobs, restaurants, food. And then in 8th grade, we read 2 novels in Spanish. So through 7th and 8th grade, we do cover all of the units that they cover at Nicolay in Spanish 1.
So schönen guten Abend. My name is Mark Wagner, and I think this might be my 13th year at Glen Hills. I've lost track. And my 22nd year at Nicolay, and I'm pleased to be able to share some information on the German curriculum with you. As in Spanish, we take the Nicolay German 1 curriculum, we divide it up over the course of 2 years, and doing so allows us to move at a slower pace and to include more extension activities, and such as pronunciation contest Germany. I'll talk about those in greater detail later on. And that's where I'm going to leave it. You continuing on.
So obviously, first and foremost, what we focused on is how can our program be designed to support student success. So one of the cool things about having Spanish in 6th grade is that students can take Spanish in 6th grade and then try German in 7th and 8th grade, and they can still articulate into German or Spanish then their freshman year at Nicolay. So that means that if they don't take 6th grade Spanish, which is fine, they can still start in 7th grade and articulate into Spanish 2 at Nicolay. And like Mark mentioned, we're able to cover our topics a lot more in depth. We can really focus on those concrete core language skills that the students are going to need to be successful, the building blocks of the language. And it really gives us a lot of time for authentic implementation of resources and put a heavy emphasis on the literacy skills that the kids need. So there's a lot of information on this slide. If I'm going to summarize it for you, what it basically says is that throughout the research that has occurred since probably about 1960 or 1970, these studies have shown time and time again that the implicit learning process is really how learners acquire a language. The drills, the worksheets, the charts, things that you see in a traditional classroom of world language, they can support student learning to an extent, but overall, these activities are not congruent with what the research shows about how language learning happens. So this really played a huge part in determining the instructional resources and methods that we were going to use, because we really have to consider the fact that whatever we do in our classroom has to support the natural language learning process. I'm happy to go more in depth if you want about some of the studies, but I kind of nerd out about that stuff, but it's also really boring for people who who don't teach world language on a daily basis. I'm done if nobody has questions, Jenica. So the main way that we can support this language acquisition process is by using something called comprehensible input. Comprehensible input is not a curriculum. It's a set of instructional strategies. And basically what they do is they give the teacher permission to create and share meaningful, comprehensible messages in the target language. We do this in our first language, and you don't even realize that you're doing it because it's so innate, but we have to recreate that experience for our students in the second language, because input really does provide a fundamental role in language acquisition. You will always be able to comprehend a language before you can produce a language. It's how infants to toddlers to school-age children learn a language too. Your 10-month-old knows what it means when you say no, but they're not going to be able to do anything except laugh at you while you're telling them to stop. And then when they're about a year and a half, they start pointing at objects and they say car and ball, and then that's that beginning part. And then they start to be able to string in like the little phrases, which turn into sentences, which turn into paragraphs, which turn into a 4-year-old that never stops talking, and you really wish they would. So, but what all that means is that we have to recreate that experience in our classroom, because we can't fight against how the brain learns. So you can go ahead, Jenica. So it's going to look and feel different. And different can be scary, but different has also been really successful with our students. So you're not going to see a lot of traditional textbook learning in our classes. You're not going to see the charts and the fill in the blanks and the memorizing the vocabulary list and the assessing the vocabulary and grammar in isolation. It doesn't align to what we know to be true about language learning. So we provide tons of visual support, pictures, images, gestures. Sometimes we use English because they need that simple translation to get them moving along the continuum of learning. We look at introducing cognates to them, which are words that look and sound the same in 2 or more languages, and really gives them some context to grab onto. We also like to do pop-up grammar lessons rather than calculated lessons, because it provides them context that they need to communicate, and they find it much more meaningful, and they're more apt to use it. A big part of our classroom is celebrating and honoring all student contributions and successes, no matter how small they may seem. Anytime a student wants to engage with the target language is a win. It can be very intimidating and very overwhelming to be looking at something that's not in the language that you speak. And by really encouraging them and doing a lot of that positive reinforcement, providing multiple opportunities to hear and to speak and to write is critical for keeping students on point in the language class. We also really focus on embedding literacy strategies, a lot of concurrency with what's happening in their ELA classrooms, activating background knowledge, annotating text, using graphic organizers, Venn diagrams, story maps, summarizing. All of those skills that they use in ELA, they can use in world language too. And we try to model that as much as we can so that they can see the language in action. Like Jenica mentioned, there were some revisions done to the Wisconsin Model Academic Standards in 2019. The last time they were modified was in 1997. So there was a lot to be done, and they really did a great job. They really stress the importance of performance and proficiency. They're not content specific. That's really important to know because you will not look at a state standard from Wisconsin for world language and see that students need to count to 10 or students need to recite the alphabet. That doesn't exist. What it does is ask us to assess how well students are able to comprehend or produce the language. Is it in words? Is it in phrases? Is it in sentences? Is it in paragraphs? So it really focuses on their ability to interpret and produce and not a checklist of skills, which gives us a lot of flexibility to implement resources that are of interest to the students. In Spanish, we have developed proficiency-based rubrics that can be adapted based on student needs, particularly as it relates to reading and writing. It's been super helpful to meet kids where they're at. That's a huge equity piece that we've been working on in world language, and I think we've been pretty successful. We also prefer to assess student proficiency with low stakes activities. So partner work, small group work, whole class assignments, choosing their own partners and things like that. It looks and feels different, and we like to give students choice and make them comfortable in showing off what they know.
Okay, we're back to me. Going to share a little bit about our curriculum. And Jenica talked about gap analysis, and that gap analysis led the German department, or me, to do a textbook adoption switch. And kudos to Jenica for making that happen during this COVID year. So the text that we're working with is called Deutsch Prima Plus, and it's by a German textbook publisher. And when I went into looking for appropriate materials to look at some of the gaps, I did actually kind of a national search. I talked to some of the people I know nationally whose programs I respected, and I found out that many of them were doing this Deutsch Prima Plus. And so went to Jenica, and she was super supportive in allowing us to switch to that series. And that's also the case at Nicolet. What I like about the series is that it uses a language to help students learn about the culture. Obviously, like all languages are interested reading, writing, listening, speaking, but then also to kind of compare their culture to the target culture and to gain some insights into both. And so the Deutsch Prima Plus especially has a significant like video segment and some really challenging listening materials that was a weakness in the prior curriculum. And then also online resources for kids to use so they can learn on their own, which is kind of really important in this virtual reality that we now have. A second part about the curriculum is we have a series of award-winning age-appropriate German films such as Lola auf der Erbse and Das Wunder von Bern that I picked up during when running the German exchange program at Nicolet. And these are films that German young people watch. And so it allows us to immerse students in the German culture and to continue to work on skill development, as Holly said. And then once again, this comparison comes up. They're able to compare, hey, how does a German film differ from an American kids film? And that comparison is one of the significant tasks in the Spanish and German AP exam that a lot of kids are going to take. And so those are two of the important resource pieces in the German curriculum. Jenica, next one. Another really significant thing, we talked about the advantages of splitting that curriculum into a 2-year sequence and that providing opportunities for immersion experiences. And during my time at Nicolet and at Glen Hills, I found out, not any shocking thing, that motivation is enhanced when students have the opportunities to showcase their learning in authentic situations as part of the curriculum. And so I've got some pictures. I'm going to talk about them briefly. In the middle, we see, that's a picture from the German State Pronunciation Contest. And that has kids present a poem and then do a conversation an authentic learning situation. And you should be very, very proud of what our Glen Hills kids do. Over the last 5 years, we've led the state in both participants and medals won at the middle school level. On the left, you see a conglomeration of kids, and they were participating in the 2019 German Day competition. That's something organized by University of Madison, Wisconsin-Madison, and it brings together middle schools from around the state. And we have to field 6 different events, and then the kids prepare, and then they take their events into competition. The 2019 group there, they took second in state. Super proud of them. And they had 6 perfect scores. And so they were motivated to, show their learning, and they just rocked it, and they just missed the state championship by a little bit, by a half a point or something. On the right, I have a picture of Jada and Bailey posing with Bucky there. And I think that's kind of one of the nice things about UW-Madison hosting us, is it provides first exposure for some of our kids that, hey, you can go study at Madison, and the flagship university in Wisconsin. And so they're showing what they can do, but then they're also thinking about that next step. And then finally, the picture on the bottom in the middle, you have a picture of Nora and 2 German girls. I said it before, Nicolay has a 50-year exchange relationship with the Gymnasium Leopoldinum in Passau. And every 2 years, I take a group of Nicolay kids over to Germany. And then when the Germans come over here, they come to Glen Hills for the day. And you can see they're hanging out with Nora, and Nora is practicing her 7th grade German, which is limited, but she's practicing it with these German girls who are encouraging her to dare to speak German and to challenge herself. And then later on, Nora gave the girls a tour of their first American middle school. And so it's a kind of an immersion experience where our kids are learning and their kids are learning. And it's one of the reasons why the program works well. Okay, Jenica, next page.
Thanks, Mark.
I have a peek inside the German program, and I don't know that I'm going to, okay. This is, Sienna is a 7th grader, and about 8 weeks in, she did this little self-introduction thing, and you can see she's talking about herself and then her school and school supplies, and then 2 of her friends. And you can kind of see what she's doing is she's working on her writing skills, but then she's also working on her technology skills. And so in the languages, we also want to teach kids to make the kind of presentations they're going to be making in real life. The next one is 8th grade flip grid. And in a virtual environment, go ahead, you can click on that. It's great to have kids give them the opportunity to speak. And we'll see whether this is going to start up.
Hallo, ich heiße Maria und heute diskutiere ich Diskussionen. Ich gehe oft ins Kino und ich gehe manchmal zum Sommerfest, aber ich gehe nie ins Museum. Das ist was. Tschüss.
Holly talked about, just really praising the kids, and that was far from perfect German, but she was practicing her German. She was putting herself out there. She was making a presentation. The last thing, is the 2018 German Day song. And hang on just a second before you started, Jenica. And so one of the 6 events, the kids choose a song, they have to learn it, and then they come up with their own choreography, they come up with their costuming, and then they practice the heck out of it. And I'm just gonna play, this is a song called Schnappi, and we're gonna listen to about 1 minute. So go ahead.
Und wir machen Schnappi, das kleine Krokodil. Ich bin Schnappi, das kleine Krokodil. Das liegt direkt bei mir. Zuerst bleib ich in einem Ei. Dann steht Schnappi, ich bin frei.
Okay, Jenica, stop her there. Yeah, you may not have noticed how nervous they were, but they were super nervous. They were very excited and super nervous. And I think what I wanted to leave you with today is when they start their language at Glen Hills in 6th or 7th grade, it's kind of tabula rasa. And so we have to build a really significant skill set. And it's partially, it's the ability to speak and listen and write and read, but then it's also the ability to dare and to challenge yourself and to do something that intimidates you. And what you see in both the Spanish and the German programs at Glen Hills is that our kids are doing that. And I think what I wanted to leave you with is I'm going to take off my Glen Hills German teacher hat and put on my Nicolay German teacher hat. What I can tell you is the last 3 years, the most challenging evaluation in high school is the AP exam. The last 3 years, the Glen Hills kids who took the German and Spanish AP exams have passed at 100% rate. I can tell you the German exam is a 74% pass rate. And so the school board, I want to thank you because your investment in foreign language at Glen Hills is encouraging our kids to go and take part in exchanges and to challenge themselves at the highest level and not just try it, but do it well and being successful. And it's a pleasure to work in a district that supports languages as you guys have. And that's war's. Dankeschön.
I just wanted to check and ask you a very quick question, just to make sure I understood. So you're saying that the Glen Hill students are 100%, everyone else is, I think you said 74?
No, the Nicolay across the board, we're 100% pass rate the last 3 years, which is ridiculous. And obviously every Glen Hills kid is in that crew. The
That's-
German national pass rate year to year is 74. And so
Ah.
we're about 26% over the national average, which, and it's fun working with kids. And now we have this good thing going, and it wouldn't be going if without the support that you have shown our learning here at the middle school.
Well, I think it's bragging rights, so that's wonderful.
Before I continue, I just want to echo what Mark said. So many districts right now are making huge splashes in their world language programs, and the fact that you guys are willing to invest in curriculum revision time for us and giving us a platform at the school board meeting to show the really cool things our program has to offer, and that you're willing to continue to put time into our program, it makes a huge statement. You might not think so, but in a time where budgets are super tight, world language is one of the first things to go. So I really want to echo his sentiments. It really makes a statement for our community. So when we looked at our instructional resources for Spanish and how we were going to move forward with Nicolay's textbook adoption, we really wanted to consider the fact that we wanted to select resources that address the universal patterns of language acquisition. So the main program that we chose is called SOMOS. And what SOMOS does is really focus on implementing authentic language to the students. It's supported by images and visuals. There's a lot of collaborative learning activities, and really at the core of it, it's comprehensible for students. So even if they don't understand every single word of what's in front of them, they'll be able to disseminate the message, and that's what we're going for. Because that's how acquisition happens, when you can put the messages together. So SOMOS is great at meeting the kids where they're at with that need. Another thing that we really want to focus on is embedding novels and emphasizing literacy, because it mirrors how we naturally acquire language. Like, I'm pretty sure almost all of us read to our kids at one point or another, and the studies show that the more you read to your child, the higher their vocabulary is and the greater their communicative ability is, and that holds true for learning a second language as well. It improves their language acquisition and communication, because the kids learn by reading and they learn by watching. So embedding those literacy skills is critical. I've kind of been trying to get a hold on what the Spanish program looks like at Glen Hills, and we do really offer some pretty cool immersion opportunities in the classroom for our students as well. Our goal is to instruct in 75% target language and support that instruction with images, gestures, definitions, anything that the kids need to make sure that they know they're understanding what I'm saying. I would welcome you into my classroom at any time. I will warn you though that I'm kind of a nut. So, but the kids understand, and that's our goal. Again, we implement those authentic literary resources whenever we can. Novels, poems, songs, news articles, TV shows, movies, commercials, social media posts, anywhere where they can see language being used outside of like what's right in front of them. When they you would be amazed, they realize like they publish newspapers in Spanish. Yes, they do. So just exposing them to those types of things is really powerful. We also embed our target vocabulary and grammar in context. I tell a lot of stories to the kids, and they really enjoy that. And that's kind of a reversal of what we have seen with traditional world language learning. In the past, what you probably saw in your world language classroom was that you would open your textbook, you would learn the grammar point, you would learn the vocabulary words, memorize those, and then you would put it all together and try to make a sentence with it. And we, with comprehensible input, flip that model around, because I like to use the analogy of putting together a puzzle. If you throw a 500-piece puzzle in front of somebody and don't give them the box, they're going to be really frustrated because they don't know what the final product is supposed to look like. There's going to be a lot of guesswork. I mean, everybody can put the edges together. That's a no-brainer, but like, what is it supposed to be at the end? If you put that puzzle in front of somebody with the picture on the box, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to relate those pieces to the whole picture. And that's what comprehensible input does. And that's why it's so effective, because the kids are able to see it in context, that whole picture. And then when they're ready, they can disseminate all of the pieces and figure out how they fit together in the whole puzzle. That's my favorite way to explain it. And like Mark said too, being able to weave those cultural nuances into lessons, describing what happens in other places in the world, comparing and contrasting those experiences in other parts of the world with their own. It's a really important communicative thing, and it also really emphasizes the cultural piece that is really at the heart of learning a language. So this video is about 2 minutes long. It includes a bunch of different student work samples, and there's also a little piece in there where I'm guiding students through the calendario, which is like telling the date for the day. We open that with that every day. I'm more than happy to answer questions about student work and what you're seeing, but Jenica, you can go ahead and play that video.
Okay, so vamos a empezar con el calendario. Es what? Lunes, martes, miércoles, jueves, viernes, sábado, domingo.
Martes.
Yes. Hoy es martes, el what? Today is the 5th. ¿Cómo se dice 5 en español?
5.
El 5. ¿De cuál mes? ¿De febrero? ¿De mayo? ¿De diciembre?
Enero.
De enero. ¿De qué año? De 1,000, 2,000, 3,000.
2021.
Voy al museo y se llama Museo Picasso Málaga. El museo está al lado de El Pimpi. Voy en el taxi al Museo Picasso Málaga con mis amigos. Voy a ver el arte en el museo.
¿Cómo se llama la profesora de ciencias?
La profesora de ciencias se llama señora Clark.
¿Tienes la carpeta? No tengo la carpeta.
Rosette va a leer un libro en la biblioteca. El libro se llama The Maze Runner.
So I tried to show a variety of activities where the students were interacting with each other through breakout rooms in Zoom, individual presentations, writing, collaborative work, and that type of stuff. We really try to mix it up and keep the kids super active and using the language as much as possible. I also have, if you are interested, a quick sample lesson of how a day might look in my classroom. If anybody is interested in engaging in some Spanish tonight.
I certainly wouldn't decline the opportunity. I'd like to see. I mean, you've come and done this great presentation. I certainly don't want you to stop short.
Oh, well, you're about to live it up in the skeleton room. So here we go. Jenica, you can just start it from the beginning for me. So this is pretty close to what we do in a daily basis in our classroom. So clase, hoy, today, hoy vamos a hablar de animales. And in inglés, ¿qué es un animal? Animal en inglés.
Animal.
Yay, muy bien. Animal es un animal, and that is a cognate. That is a word that looks and sounds the same in 2 or more languages. Y vamos a hablar de animales. So then I'll provide a quick slide of important vocabulary. And hoy, dos palabras, words, importantes, vocabulario importante. The first word is I. Clase, repitan. I.
I.
Muy bien, I. And I is the word that means there is or there are. You can use it in any sentence. It never changes meaning. The other word we're going to work on today is ves. And anytime I say ves, I'm going to point to my eyes just to remind you what it means. And ves means you see. Clase, repitan. Ves.
Ves. Ves.
Yep, ves. Muy bien, clase. Ves means you see. Which word on the screen means there is?
I.
I, muy bien. I means there is. And which word on my screen right now means you see?
Vase.
Vase, excelente. So I and vase. And at this point, I would encourage the kids to write them down in their notebook if they are going to need that extra reminder. All right, next slide. Clase, vamos al zoológico. En inglés, zoológico es museum, ¿sí o no?
No.
No, zoológico no es museum. Es obvio, no es museum. Zoológico es hospital, ¿sí o no? No, zoológico no es hospital. Es obvio, no es hospital. Clase, zoológico es zoo, ¿sí o no?
Sí.
Sí. Y hoy, today, hoy vamos al zoológico. Okay, Jenica.
All right, I was so intrigued with this.
I know, it's so much fun. I love it.
My thumb's going.
Ay, los animales.
Sí, hay los animales. Muy bien, Vestim. Excelente. Hay animales. Y clase, ¿ves dos animales? ¿Sí o no?
No.
No, no ves dos animales. ¿Ves 5 animales? ¿Sí o no?
No. No.
No, no ves 5 animales. ¿Ves 9 animales? ¿Sí o no?
Sí.
Sí.
Sí, hay 9 animales. Hay 9 animales. Y clase, ¿ves a número 3? ¿Ves?
Sí.
¿Ves a número 3? Y número 3. Número 3 es un elefante, ¿sí o no?
No.
No, no es un elefante. Número 2 es un elefante. Y clase, número 7. ¿Ves a número 7? Número 7 es un león o es un tigre. ¿León o tigre?
Tigre.
Tigre, muy bien. Okay, so I could literally do this all day.
And you
I
And you
created
do.
that in about 5 minutes, but that is something that I could use to engage the kids for an entire class period. It's so I mean I I was telling Jenica when we were putting this together, like I'm such a language nerd and I absolutely love doing this stuff with the kids. And for people that have had 0 Spanish, my hope is that you are able to comprehend at least 75% of what I just covered. And that would be how we do stuff. So through stories, through the other day we were working on jobs and I did a slideshow where the animals were all dressed up at different jobs. And I saw Gretchen Kroll on here. Gretchen, please ask Lucas about the unicorn. But I am open to any questions or feedback or suggestions or anything else that you guys think would be of importance to our world language program. I also included a bunch of sources if you're interested in reading some real riveting articles about language acquisition and the brain-based research that goes into that.
I have a comment. I just want to invite her to my buildings and ground meeting because she would be so amazingly awesome to engage with those people on something that we don't necessarily understand. And if you were my teacher, I took 3 semesters of 2 years as a high school person and 1 outside. And let me tell you, I didn't learn anything. You would have been amazing. So, and I just think all the teachers are amazing when it comes teaching language. I just wanted to give you praise because you're praising us, but you actually teach the kids. So I thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I really do enjoy it. It's so much fun. And the sentiment, Tamika, that you have about I took X number of years of a world language and I don't remember a thing, it's so common. And that's why I'm so grateful to have you guys willing to embrace the change and to go through the process of like kind of like blowing up our program to make it more relevant for our students.
I had a quick question, Ms. Skelton.
Yeah.
This is Teresa.
Hi.
In one of the first slides, you go over how you have bifurcated Spanish 1 at Nicolet into 2 years, maybe 3 years at Glen Hills. Yes, that's the one. And I note in 7th grade and 8th grade, you've got 1 novel for 7th grade and 2 novels for 8th grade. But I don't see that in the Nicolet Spanish 1 program. Is that in addition or to that curriculum, or do they also get novels at Nicolet?
They in Spanish 1 do not read any novels.
Good for you. Thank you. That's all I wanted.
You know, if I can just chime in here, I just want to say, you know, Juliana has had a really great year. I'm kind of this old schooly kind of person who loves seeing books, and my pea-sized brain sometimes can't wrap itself around learning in really what is a more dynamic way. And so I get nervous when I don't have a book, and I don't think that kids today necessarily, feel that way. And I think that this is, a really engaging approach to learning. And, I know how much harder it is to teach virtually, but I'm just overwhelmed with, how impassioned everyone is, how eager everyone is. I mean, you obviously, but just from everyone who's presented today, there's a great amount of advocacy, a great amount of knowledge, a great amount of joy in teaching kids, and it really just permeates your presentation today. And so I want to say thank you. It's the hardest circumstances to teach people, and language is a hard thing. But I just want to make sure that the board has your back, and that we really love what you've been doing. And
Thank you so
it's
much.
wonderful to see this.
Thank you very much.
And that goes
Can
to
I
all of you.
second that?
Yeah,
You're here.
Can I second that?
absolutely. I mean, we can take
I
Yeah.
just have to say, my son Lucas Grandin was, he heard you and he got all excited. He's not in the room right now, so I can say it. But he's like,
He's one of my superheroes. He does great work for me.
he said, we do that. He was just delighted to hear your voice and
Thank you.
talking. So thank you for all the work you do. He loves it.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'm going to wrap up our world language report, and just a big thank you again to the school board for supporting us with this programming and moving us forward. And thank you to all the teachers who I get the opportunity to work with on this world language. I'm very grateful, and just doing some really good things for kids, and we're very proud of what's happening. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much again.
Yeah.
With nothing else on the topic, that was item 4A. So Dr. Moser, item 4B is reopening updates and data reports from North Shore Health Department.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. It has become a tradition at the Glendale-River Hills School Board meetings for Dr. Kilton to give us updates and reports from the North Shore Health Department. The board and the community have enjoyed and benefited from these updates. So if I could turn it over to Dr. Kilton for her report.
You bet. For those of you that have been watching these reports over the last several months, you've probably remember my dogs being part of the presentation. I just want to thank the foreign language group. They slept through the entire thing. And I'm sure now that it's my turn, they will wake up and pleasure everyone with their barking. So wish me luck. I am thrilled to say we have some good news for our presentation tonight. As you know, for the last several months, we have been following the metrics in 4 different areas: the burden, the percent positivity, the number of cases, and the hospital care. The exciting thing about today's report is not only are there good data points to report, because the importance of this week, I also got updates today, hot off the press from the North Shore Health Department. So a special thanks to Ann and Kayla at the department for helping me get data that's relevant as of today. So you will notice this is our first data point. We've been talking about the burden rate for many months now. We have been, for the last several months, in the critical or high areas. We are finally in the moderate to high case with 78 as our burden rate. This is a real reason to celebrate. Glendale is actually doing better than the whole North Shore as a whole. So that's awesome news. Again, here's that same data point in a chart form or in a graph form. This is the lowest number that we've had in the burden since we began tracking this back in September. So again, outstanding news for Glendale. You'll notice our nice red line is just trending downward. The last 2 weeks, we've had 10 new cases, and then the last 1 week, we've had 5 new cases. So again, you'll notice there are several days on this chart that there have been no new cases whatsoever. This is a huge success for us as well. We've been talking for months about wanting to get below 5% for the percent positivity as a ideal number to permit students to meet in person. Last time we did the presentation, we were at 5%, and this time we are actually at 1.5% positivity. The chart on the right side, you'll notice it just breaks it down by the age of the child. This again is a great chart to share tonight. You'll notice we are now, 2 sections of our age groups are in the low range, which is the green there. The under 5 and 5 to 9 are both low. Our middle school age children, ages 10 to 14 are still in the critical, but again, that is expected. These 2 data charts from the hospital care haven't changed much over the times. They have improved and they continue to improve. The Milwaukee County dashboard continues to report improvements in these areas. Another huge success on this chart. Just as a reminder, the top chart reflects percent positivity that was calculated using a different method. So the chart on the bottom compares apples to apples. So that's the one we're going to be focusing on. You'll notice the data point here of our burden rate is now considered moderately high. We've gotten into the orange range. Our number of new cases, 5, gets us in the green, and the percent positivity of 1.5 gets us in the green on this chart as well. This is the key that we've been referencing over the months. And again, because we have in these previous slides gotten into the orange and green, that allows us to look in these areas for the additional criteria. So that's a positive. Here's our data right now. We actually have in the Glendale-River Hill School District, no active student or staff cases, nobody on quarantine, either students or staff. This chart is the same, has not changed over the last several weeks. Number of people working from home due to healthcare reasons, childcare reasons, 4 yet, and then 0 and 1 person on a leave of absence yet. Again, the daycare updates that I've done each month. Glendale Heights has no active staff cases, nobody on quarantine. They have 1 active student case. That student was not in the building when they developed symptoms and not 2 days prior to developing symptoms. So that child's case has not affected anyone in the daycare. The Milestones program at Parkway, zeros across the board. Everyone is doing their diligence on the safety protocols to stay safe at Parkway. So what does this mean for us? It means next steps. Dr. Moser mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, and I think Mr. Franklin as well. Plan to attend the board meeting tomorrow night at 6:30 to talk about the reopening plan presentation. Any discussions? Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I've actually
Thanks,
just,
Shannon.
You're welcome.
okay, I apologize. My screen here just blocked up slightly. So I am just calling this back up, and our next item is item 5A, visitor participation. Visitors may speak, and so we'll give a couple moments here. Visitors may speak on any non-agenda or agenda item at this time. We've moved visitor participation up, although I know it's already been a long meeting before new business, so that people have the right and the opportunity to speak. But keep in mind, state law and or board policy may limit the board response. We ask if possible to keep your comment to 3 minutes. And so I'm going to just give everyone a few moments. I know that there's a lot of people here, and so please take your time. But if you would like to make a comment, why don't you raise your hand, and we'll call on you in the order that your hand appears. I would like to just say while we're waiting here, there shouldn't be any executive session tomorrow night. I think we're all in open session tomorrow. And I know that sometimes it gets frustrating waiting for us to get out of our executive session, but our meeting should start very close to 6:30 tomorrow. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand, and so I hate to close visitor participation.
There's one, Andy. I see one.
Patty Zimon's has her hand raised.
Oh, there we go. Ms. Simons.
Hello, everyone. Patty Zimans, 5819 North Argyle Avenue in Glendale. I have a son who is a 7th grader at Glen Hills, and I am also an English teacher at Nicolay. So I just want to take a few minutes because I feel like I need to give a shout out to Mark Wagner after the wonderful presentation from all the world language teachers tonight. But Mark is my son's, I'm going to get a little emotional here, sorry. But he's my son's German teacher, and I also worked with Mark. And I also went on the German exchange trip with Mark as a chaperone, one of my first years at Nicolay. So I've worked with Mark for about 20 years now. And I just want to say publicly a huge thank you to him. He is not only a phenomenal educator and just works so hard for all kids, but he's a phenomenal human being, kind, compassionate, and our kids are so lucky to have him. So thank you, Herr Wagner, for everything you do.
It's lovely. Thank you very much. Very much appreciate that. Okay, then we have another hand up. Amanda Seligman.
Hi, Amanda Seligman, 7120 North Braeburn Lane in Glendale. And since Ms. Zineman's spoke in praise of Mark Wagner, I was thinking about doing that, and I'd like to as well. I have my second child in Herr Wagner's class this year, and my older student at Nicolay, and he is a life-changing teacher. He actually taught my kid to ride a bike, which I thought she'd never do, even though he was not outside with her when that happened. He's just been an amazing educator. And I tell my children, so often they're tired of hearing it, that Mark Wagner is one of the best teachers they're ever going to be privileged to learn from. So thank you so much for supporting the opportunity for students, not only at Nicolay, but also Glen Hills, to learn German from him.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate those comments. Okay. So that's all that we have. I'm going to slowly migrate to the next item, going once and going twice. And we're closing visitor participation, but remember, you'll have an opportunity to speak tomorrow. And the handbook has already been posted, as Dr. Moser said, and I think everyone has an email with the link or with the document itself. All right. Item number 6 then, new business. Approval of school breakfast program. Dr. Moser.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin, members of the school board. And before I begin, Karen, are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
Were you able to let Molly Borton in?
Yep, Molly's here too.
Perfect, thank you very much. Mr. Franklin, members of the school board, sorry for that little exchange. This evening, I'd like to present the recommendation of the school board finance committee and of my own and the principals of our schools that the Glendale-River Hills School District will have a school breakfast program beginning with the reopening of our schools, if the board approves of the reopening of schools. We have been working with our food vendor, and with us tonight is the regional director of RMARC, Molly Borton, who happens to be a Nicolay graduate. And I just thought I'd get that in there since we're talking about Nicolay tonight. This is an opportunity for the perfect timing to begin our breakfast program with the with the proposed reopening of the Glendale-River Hills schools. So with that, Ms. Borton, if you're on, if Mr. Franklin allows it, may I ask Ms. Borton if she has a few comments to make about our proposed breakfast program at Parkway and Glen Hills?
Go ahead.
Sure, I am on. Thanks for having me. As Dr. Moser mentioned, I'm a general manager for Aramark I oversee many local school districts within the North Shore into Ozaukee County and Milwaukee County. So I have experience with starting new breakfast programs and running existing ones. So we took over the contract for all the North Shore Consortium schools as of July. Very excited to be within the districts. And I must say, one of the most surprising things was that there was no breakfast program. It's a great opportunity, as Dr. Moser alluded to, time now to start this, especially because of waivers from the USDA to allow all students to eat not only lunch, but breakfast for free. So any parents who have been participating in the virtual meal pickups that have existed since July now, or our predecessor was also serving them since March of last year virtually. With these waivers, we are not only allowed to serve lunch, but also breakfast free of charge. And it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to offer a nutritious start to the day for students who either don't have time in the morning. It's just a hurdle, one less thing for parents to have to worry about. The neat thing is that the food that we will serve is all non-perishable besides the milk that it includes. So we'll be able to serve it in the classrooms if principals allow us to, whether it means kids saving it for later for a snack. The items are they're shelf stable, so kids can eat it at snack time, they can eat it after school, whatever the case is. So it's a neat program that the DPI strongly encourages. They would be singing our praises if they know of our desire to offer it in your schools. So it's a wonderful opportunity. It's sort of a shame not to be able to offer this to students, and we are hopeful that we can begin the program.
So thank you, Molly. We appreciate that. Are there any questions from the school board, Mr. Franklin, if I may pose that question?
I just want to say that when I got on the board 4 years or whatever, I had talked to Larry about this so many times. I am so glad we're doing this because we couldn't figure out how to do it with our schedule and the buses. So I am extremely happy about this and making sure that our kids, no one has to worry about getting fed, and a food shame also is not going on. Everybody's getting food. Everybody is equal, and there's an equity piece to this. So I thank you very much, Dr. Moser.
Thank you.
So I have a question. I think I heard this, but I want to clarify that breakfast would be able to be picked up. It's like, so in our virtual model right now, kids would pick up breakfast for the week the same way they pick up their lunches, right?
Correct. Yep, they would be included in the virtual meal packs as well as served within the in-school model of whatever that looks like in the classrooms or within the schools themselves.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to sort of clarify for myself that I really appreciate this program. The timing of it to coincide with potentially reopening. I have concerns about adding an extra meal period unmasked should we choose to reopen. So a vote for this program, I just sort of want to clarify that if we begin this program, it doesn't necessarily also, it's not a vote for how it will be implemented when it begins. Is that fair to say at this point?
If I may, Mr. Franklin, the breakfast program could be part of the snack time for the elementary students. The principals and the teachers, I think, will be able to make a good judgment on how to utilize the nutritional benefits of the breakfast program. I do not anticipate, because we've discussed this, that this will be an interference into the academic program, but we'll make sure we watch that. But the kids in the elementary schools get a break, and they eat snacks. This could be a snack, just as easily as anything else. They won't necessarily be going down to the cafeteria in either school to be eating this, and so it doesn't have to be anything that's negative on the academics.
Yeah, and if I can just say one more thing in terms of the flexibility of this program, the waivers that I mentioned that are available from the DPI right now for our breakfast and lunch programs also allow, there used to be time constraints on when you would serve breakfast and when you would serve lunch. There are no time constraints whatsoever. Breakfast, we've seen it I've seen it done every possible way right now. There's some people who hand it out at the end of the day. Kids take it home. They eat it at home in the morning. It still can count as a breakfast. There's like Dr. Moser mentioned, where they eat it at snack time, but it's handed out in the morning. There's so much flexibility. It used to have to be before 10 a.m. that this program took place. And like I said, now it could be handed out at the end of the day for the following day. There's just all these different options. So there is a ton of flexibility, and I would hope to not see it interfere with instructional time. And if anything, enhance these students' ability to, learn in the classroom. And of course, I don't have to go into all the studies that surround being well nourished and giving the brain enough energy to function and absorb all the information that they've taken in school. So that would just be my extra comment there.
Thank you. That's helpful. Knowing about that flexibility is important. So
certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. Then are there any other questions? If there aren't any, then I think we actually need to have a motion on the table.
So moved, Teresa.
Is there a second?
Second.
There we go. And any further discussion? If not, I will do a roll call vote. All in favor of providing breakfast pursuant to the program for the remainder of the school year. Teresa Seam.
Aye.
Molly Krachowiak.
Aye.
Danielle Bailey.
Aye.
Tamika Vukovic.
Aye.
And Andrew Franklin votes aye. This is wonderful. Motion carries. Okay, item 6B, approval of the 2020 to 2021 preliminary reopening budget.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin, and thank the board for your vote on the breakfast. It's I think it's a very good move by the school board. The budget. This recommendation by the school board finance committee is premised on whether the board votes to reopen. If the board would decide not to reopen the schools, of course, we would not engage in an expenditure of funds in the reopening effort. As was discussed with the school board finance committee, I approached all of the administrators in the district and asked them to submit to me recommendations on what they needed in order to build a budget for the reopening of the Glendale-River Hills School District. And they did that, and they did a very nice job, a very thorough list. From that list, I pared it down to a recommended list of approximately $162,630. Why did I pare it down to this amount? It's because the funds from the federal government, the CARES 2, has not been finalized at our state level. And the state legislature is still discussing how the money that CARES 2 is distributing to the states, how it will be distributed to the school districts. So in order to be conservative and to support the effort, if the board decides to reopen, I pared it down to the 162,630, knowing that there will probably be a need for additional requests if and when the state legislature completes their analysis of how that money is going to be distributed. The School Board Finance Committee has recommended that this budget be passed on to the full board and has acted in a manner which recommends approval. If the board approves of this in total, there will be scrutiny with the administrators such as Mr. Beckman on where we are in the status of our mask usage, just to make sure we don't expend any money that we don't need. But there is a recognition, and it's a plea from school districts such as Glendale, that as people are calling for schools to reopen in a safe and healthy way, there's a need for resources to do it. And that the legislature needs to come through and be helpful in providing resources and not to throw up any roadblocks. And so I'm being conservative. The finance committee was a conservative, yet we're making this request today so that we have time to order things so that they're here by March 8th, so that we can have a very successful opening to the schools if that is so directed by the school board. So I am recommending, and the finance committee is recommending, school board approval of the preliminary or the budget for the reopening of schools. Questions, comments?
Sorry about that. Is there, I guess we should start out with the motion. Is there a motion with respect to the recommendation?
So moved.
Great.
I second it then.
All right. Who's the second?
Tamika.
Oh, great. All right. Then any discussion? None?
I have just one comment that I find this budget so purposeful, and the items on it, particularly the masks that will be provided to the teachers. I know that there are other districts that did not spend the money on that, and I feel that this is so important. Everything is important, but I just think providing that to teachers just is another step in showing that, you know, we care about everyone's safety, and this list is nice and exhaustive of what the district needs.
Okay.
I had a quick question, Andy. It's Teresa.
Cool.
Dr. Moser, you talked about paring down the requested budget. I just wanted to get a sense of what you pared.
Certainly, and I'll just make a couple of general comments. There were some personnel requests for items such as social worker, counselor, or counselors, that until I received the final guidelines for the CARES 2 Act, I was concerned that those areas were not going to be approved as mitigation expenditures. So there were another one was Mr. Beckman asked for 4 additional part-time custodians, and what I ended up approving was 1 full-time. And some of those personnel items are high expenditures that we don't have the full knowledge of, or I don't, somebody may, and I'm working with Mr. Weaver on this, on what will be approved as mitigation expenditures. I would like to comment on School Board Member Krahowiak's comment. It is true. I tried to limit or pare down the requests to those items that I don't think will have any question being approved as mitigation issues. Even the two areas where there are personnel, the effort to reopen schools, Ms. Young, Principal Young and Principal Dr. Smith, their items are to very specifically help with the supervision of students in bringing kids back and on playground supervision for the kids at Parkway. So I've tried to be consistent, as School Board Member Krahowiak had mentioned, to limit it right now to those things that are obviously mitigating efforts on our part for staff, for faculty, and the students.
Thank you.
Okay. And, you know, I do want to throw out my observation that I think it's an impressive list of expenditures here. And not to dovetail into the discussion too far that we're going to have tomorrow, but it involves a lot of personal protective equipment, air purifiers, plexiglass dividers, you know, things that we're going to need, you know, not just for health and safety, but also to assure people that if we do reopen, that we're doing it correctly. So I think it's a pretty exhaustive list in terms of what we have before us today.
Mr. Franklin, I just found all the lists. If you'd like me to run through even more of what I shared.
Information isn't a bad thing.
Playground equipment for classrooms, art supplies I did not include, instrument bell coverings, storage bins, youth mental health training. Give me a moment here. Replacement books for grades 2 through 8. An interventionist, 2 interventionists, 3 interventionists. It doesn't mean those things aren't worthy. It just, I am not sure that those are going to be approved if mitigation is the going to be the standard. Increasing one staff member to full-time who's now half-time, hiring a counselor or social worker, and hiring a special ed teacher.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All right, then I'm going to do roll vote. All in favor, Teresa Seam?
Aye.
Molly Krahowiak?
Aye.
Danielle Bailey?
Aye.
Mika Vukovic?
Aye.
And Andrew Franklin votes aye. Motion carries. Wonderful planning. Okay, the next item is item number 7A. Discussion policy JECBB open enrollment.
President Franklin and members of the school board, the school board policy committee has had a good opening discussion on a revised board policy and open enrollment. Dr. Kilton put together proposed revisions, and the policy committee has requested that the policy JECBB would be brought back to the committee for a second reading before it is presented to the school board for any form of action. So tonight we're not asking for, or the policy committee is not asking for action, but presenting to you that it has had a first reading before the policy committee, and it'll be going back to the policy committee. And I suggest if you would like, if the chair of the policy committee has any additions.
And I was going to ask for the same thing if there were any additions. Teresa or
Moving forward, no, the only question I had moving forward was ensuring that Glendale-River Hills includes a waiting list in its policy.
yeah. All right. Should we move on to the next item then? Purchasing? Or does anyone else have any other comments? I don't want to.
Thank you, President Franklin, members of the school board. The policy committee wanted to discuss policy DJ and see if there were any revisions that needed to be added before a new business administrator and superintendent are hired. The policy committee had an initial discussion on purchasing, directed that it come back for a second reading with the policy committee before it is again brought back to the full board for a review. But this was identified by the policy committee as being an important policy that they wanted to put on the record as soon as possible.
I just have a real quick question, and I'm looking at this and correct me if I'm wrong, but when there is a purchase that needs to be made over $5,000 and 3 bids need to be sought, who will the person in charge of the bids be reporting to be held accountable for showing those bids? Like, who will be in charge of receiving the bids and helping out with that process?
Thank you. Excellent question. Especially excellent question in light of our interview last night with the business administrator. It would be the business administrator who would have oversight, and of course the superintendent would make sure that that take place. As of today, as a result of the discussions during the interview with the business administrator and this discussion on purchasing, I discussed with Mr. Weaver, and I've given instructions that no purchase orders are to be processed in the district without my approval, my prior approval, in order to make sure that that scrutiny that you're asking has been, and the policy that the policy committee is suggesting is followed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and again, this is just a discussion item for today, but I do think that it is important that we work to update our purchasing policies. It has been some time, and I think that it is a good idea to have updated guidance and certainly to refamiliarize ourselves with both the principles of public procurement and the contents of our policies. I think that there's a great degree of ownership in there, and I also think it's important in terms of the public service that we do. And so I think it's a good thing that we're doing this exercise at this point.
Jim Beckman has his hand up.
Oh. Okay. Mr. Beckman.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Franklin. If I might, just for a moment here, I'm glad that we kind of tabled this, didn't table a policy, but this policy is an old one. I think as you realize the date on it, it hasn't been looked at in quite a while. And I would encourage the policy committee, or we can do it as administrators, to look at other districts too. Some of the dollar amounts in here are antiquated in today's world. When we look at those levels of purchasing, and I think Dr. Mosier's right in waiting till the new business administrator and or superintendent is here, and then sitting down with the administrative team to come back to the board with recommendations would be my thought in looking at all aspects of that policy, because there's some day-to-day things that that will run over $5,000. And I don't think the board wants to get involved in buying toilet paper and paper towels that, that has to happen. But I think that there has to be some revisions in there too. So, because the dollar might exceed that $5,000 amount. So I think it's good to wait and talk about that and put more framework in the policy, if you will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And does anyone else have anything to add before we move on to the next? Okay. Then the next item is item 7C, discussion policy GCB, professional staff contract.
President Franklin, Chair Franklin, and the school board, the policy committee also reviewed this policy. It primarily deals with the issue that before any compensation, stipends, pay can go to anyone employed by the school district. It would be recommended by the district administrator, superintendent, but approved by the school board. I added a red-lined item in the policy, but the policy committee has indicated it is to come back to them as a first reading, and the policy committee will review this before it comes to the full board for action.
Okay. All right. Then moving on to item 7D. School board retreat.
It was during the committees, the February committee meetings, that the suggestion has been made that with the advent of the upcoming election for the Glendale-River Hills School Board, and Mr. Wynn, my assumption is Mr. Wynn will be joining the board. The committees indicated that they would like to have a school board retreat as an opportunity to thank school board member Seam for her outstanding service to the school district and to our community. At the same time, welcome Mr. Wynn to the school board, and to begin discussing items such as strategic planning, other aspects that come to play with a policy review. The policy committee had discussed the process of doing policy review and how the board wants to go about doing that. It would be an opportunity, even though I expect, and this is my expectation, and I could be wrong, the board will be, the present board, the present 5 members of the board will have named a new superintendent by approximately April 26th. That if that takes place, and I hope it does, that let's say in early May, there could be a school board retreat to begin planning and preparation, and a thank you to Ms. Seam for all of her work, and that there is a smooth transition on the board with the addition of Mr. Wynn as a new board member. Now, with that statement, President Franklin, members of the policy committee, the intent of this topic, in case I missed something, I turn it back to you.
No, I think that it's really important to have school board retreats, something that we've been talking about for a number of years, and for a variety of reasons haven't been able to to really orient. And I expect that Teresa and I are the last two members who've been at a school board retreat. But one thing that I talked about today, which I think is an important part of that, is just having, up to date kind of training and workshopping on the key issues. And again, it's a good exercise for everyone to be involved. So I am looking forward to getting back on track and doing that.
I had a comment, Andy, just to emphasize that part of the retreat is also to update our strategic vision, our mission statement, et cetera. Those are, I think, quite outdated, as are some of our policies, and going over those will be very, very helpful.
I agree. And, if I can, I think it may have been mentioned by Ms. Bailey recently, but that's been something that we've talked about doing intermittently. And I think we're at the critical mass of updating our mission and vision, our mission statement and vision. I think it's a terrific opportunity to do that. And those are things that we need to work on as well. And so the retreat will help us to focus on the best way to approach those issues. Thank you. Okay. If no one has any other comments, I'm just going to move on to item 7E, which is an update on superintendent search. And Dr. Moser, would you like me to just kind of give the Cliff's Notes here?
Yeah, would you please?
So long story short is that we're doing really well. We've got a number of candidates who are coming in who've been coming into the in contact with the postings. So we are going to be working on next month in terms of whittling down that field to a group of 8 to 12 candidates. Those 8 to 12 candidates are going to come to us in kind of a prearranged presentation. And from there, we're going to whittle it down to probably somewhere around 5 or 6 in-person candidates. So the board's going to close out formally the job posting by the end of March, by March 21st. We're going to have our first rounds on April 7th with the 8 to 12 candidates, and then moving from there, probably the week after, to a group of about 5 to 6. And then from there, if we don't have a clear candidate, the top finalist would be brought in for another follow-up. By all indications, we've struck a lot of interest. I know that we have a variety of candidates who are applying. I don't have any of their names, but I will tell you that probably 2/3 of it are Milwaukee metro area or Southeast Wisconsin regional specific. But we have had a few in the areas of, I think, Michigan, Indiana, Northern Illinois. So, we're an attractive district, and we've got a lot to offer. And I think that things are going smoothly at this point. So if anyone had any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But otherwise,
Yay, team.
Yep. Okay.
Jim Beckman has his hand up. Is that from earlier, or is that recent?
Oh, Jim, did you, is that a new hand raise, or is that the old? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't unraise my hand.
That's quite all right.
And I wasn't applying. Even though Dr. Moser asked me to, I said, no, I had to turn him down. He was.
That's funny.
Sorry, I lowered my hand, Mr. Franklin.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay, our last item is number 8A, which is a motion to adjourn. Before taking a motion on this, I just want to remind everyone, tomorrow at 6:30, we should start on time. And you should also have emails with either a link or the actual document that we are using as our final handbook that'll guide us in our discussion tomorrow. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Teresa.
Is there a second?
Second, Danielle.
Okay, I'll just do a quick voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for joining, and see you tomorrow night.
Stay safe, everyone, and
Take care.
warm.
Yes. Good night.
Yep. Bye-bye.